Hey guys, Level Cap here, and yesterday the trailers for Dune Awakening were released. This is going to be an open world survival game very much inspired by and based around the cinematic style that Denis Villeneuve has created for the Dune franchise, and honestly, it looks really good. Now, I'm excited for this game for two reasons. The first one is that the new Dune movies are really servicing the books quite well, and it could kickstart a whole new wave for Dune-related media, whether it's games or shows or board games, what have you. And as a fan of the Dune book and now the movies, I am quite excited for this to become something bigger. Much in the same way that, say, Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings films kickstarted a whole new wave of cool games and toys and media surrounding that franchise. I'm all for the same treatment with Dune, frankly, because it's just such a fun, interesting universe, and frankly, I think it would make it a fantastic survival game, which it seems like Funcom has really tapped into. Now, the planet of Arrakis, which is where Dune Awakening takes place, is incredibly inhospitable. It's covered in deserts, it's got sandworms that can sense your vibrations when you walk across the sand and will come up and eat you, which makes it a perfect environment for trying to stay alive in a video game. Hydration is going to be a main gameplay factor, where you'll need to stay in the shade during the day so you don't overheat and die, and you'll have to lick dew and moisture off of plants, or you could potentially kill enemy players and drink their blood for the moisture. It's pretty wild stuff, but it sounds awesome. It's also been shown and made clear from the developers that crafting and base building is going to be a major component to the gameplay. Apparently they're bringing over some of those mechanics from Conan Exiles, but even evolving it, where they said you'll be able to build extremely elaborate bases that are complex and nuanced, and then save the blueprints for those bases and even sell them to other players. So if somebody sees your really cool looking base and they're like, oh man, that would take me forever to build or design on my own, you could potentially buy the blueprint. Now, the devs also talked about their combined arms gameplay. Basically, it means you'll be able to have melee combat, ranged weapon combat, and vehicular combat all together, whether it's fighting against other players or fighting against NPCs running on missions, stuff like that. Looks really elaborate. I mean, they've got the ornithopters in the trailer, so not only are you like walking around and scrambling up cliff sides, but you can also fly through the environment. I'm very curious to see just how expansive this world could be, because if you've got vehicles this fast and this capable of traversing large areas of terrain, does that mean this world is just absolutely massive? Now, the game is also designed heavily around co-op gameplay. From the trailer, we can see there's some sort of drop pod coming in from the atmosphere, and then you can chase it down, and it seems like there's probably loot there. There's going to be a ping system for playing with friends for spotting things, but there's also going to be co-op journeys and contract missions that you can do with friends. So longer, more elaborate narrative-driven journeys, or simpler, shorter contracts that you could run. Plus, there'll be a guild system and stuff like that. I'm curious to see if this factors into the base building mechanics as well. Will you have a guild base, or is it more just going to be team up with your friends and go around and do guild activities? They did mention that there will be missions where they actually have factions competing against each other, so some of the missions will directly tie into some PvP style combat, so that sounds pretty cool. Now, they're also going to have a massive PvP location area called Shifting Sands that changes every week, and that's due to the sandstorm. So the topography, the layout, what have you, will be different and new, which sounds really cool, because that's one of the things that makes some of the other more well-known survival PvP-oriented games become more stale, as people just learn the maps really well, and then people start camping all the high loot areas or the choke points and stuff like that. If the zone changes every single week, that seems really cool, actually. It means that you're gonna have to build up a series of skill sets that adapts to whatever environment you're in, rather than just relying on knowing the environment like the back of your hand. Now, naturally, the sandworms of Arrakis are one of the main features of this planet, and the devs were kind enough to actually talk about some of their interaction. You will not be able to kill sandworms, which kind of makes sense given their size and how they perform in the books as well. You will, however, be able to, well, one, you'll be able to get killed by sandworms, but you'll also be able to lure them with the thumpers that they use in the books. And so you could either use this thumper to potentially lure one away from where you need to go, or you could lure it towards an enemy base or an enemy area. So that sounds kind of cool to use sandworms as a gameplay mechanic. Now, as for combat types and character progression within the game, it seems like you'll have quite a few options. Not only can you sort of decide your character's backstory and starting abilities, but from there, once you're actually in game, you can go around to different trainers, complete their missions, and then learn the skills from them and sort of plan out your skill set or develop new skills that interest you. The combat can be anything from melee to ranged weapons, and there's even going to be some of the cool mind control style abilities. The developer talked about being able to use grappling hooks to get up onto high cliffs and shoot things from afar, or use some of your melee combat abilities and lure enemies into close range and kill them that way. There'll be things like sniper rifles and shotguns and all that stuff. It sounds like a really robust and expansive way to play. So if you're coming from, say, Funcom's previous game, Conan Exiles, and you like the melee combat, it seems like there's going to be melee combat here, but if you're a shooter fan, it seems like you'll have that as well. I'm very curious to see how this ultimately balances out, because historically doing melee and shooter games together is a trickier thing to do, especially in an open world survival game. It'll be curious to see how metas establish themselves and whatnot, but the game does look fantastic. They talk about using Unreal Engine 5. They're using a lot of the latest technology like Lumen and whatnot to just make the world look really good. It's certainly up there with any of the other major AAA titles being developed in terms of its visual prowess, and they're taking most of the art direction from the films, which have incredible art direction. So the world looks really good. Some things feel a little out of place. Some of the drivable little tank bike things don't look like they might fit into the universe quite as well, but still overall the general presentation looks very inviting in sort of a hostile environment type way. I just love the Dune universe that has been created by the movies and the book, and this game seems like it could complement both the book and the movie quite nicely. Most of the YouTube comments from the trailers were like, oh my god, this looks cool. Please take your time with it. Don't rush it. Make sure it's good at launch. And I would very much echo those comments, where what they've shown so far looks very promising. The ideas they've talked about sound great. It seems like a perfect premise for an open world survival based game. Now just dial it in. Make sure you don't launch it with crappy servers or some of the major mechanics just not working properly. Dial it in, get it all running at launch, and this could be the start of a major gaming franchise built around the Dune universe, which I would very much welcome, because as a huge sci-fi fan myself, and as somebody who grew up with Star Wars, I feel like I kind of aged out of some of the more popular sci-fi genres that just don't appeal to me as much, but Dune absolutely does appeal to me. It's got that fun, deep political backstory to it, really cool sci-fi ideas, everything makes sense within the universe. I'm all for it. I'd be curious to know what you guys think about it. What kind of gameplay mechanics would you want to see in a Dune Arrakis survival game? It sounds awesome just from the basic premise alone, but the details is really what's going to make or break this title. Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more content like this, hit that notification bell to beat the YouTube algorithm with me, and up next, check out what has got to be one of the best Star Wars mods for any game ever made. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.